Great. Well, it looks like we have a good number of folks who have joined in. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining this week's Semantic Kernel office hours. There's just a couple of reminders and announcements from our end before we dive into your questions. The first thing that I want to highlight is around our cadence. If this is your first time joining our office hours, welcome. We have weekly Semantic Kernel office hours on Wednesdays from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific time for those based in US and EMEA. And then monthly, we also have a dedicated Semantic Kernel office hours for folks that are in the APAC time region. And that is on the second Wednesday of every month from 4 to 5 p.m. Pacific time as well. And so just a quick reminder on that, or kind of a housekeeping if you're joining for the first time. If you do have questions in between our office hours, we're very active in Discord and then also in GitHub discussions. And then I'll go through a bit of our Discord updates that we have there as well. But I want to cover a couple of our latest releases since we last met. For Python, we now have 1.25.0 out. And so we'll dive into this a bit more in detail, but we have the NVIDIA embedded connector that is now part of Semantic Kernel. There's also a small fix for some Pinecone integrated embeddings as well, and then just an overall bump of our Python package. And so if you haven't had a chance to look at that, we recommend you do. And then for .NET, there are a number of changes, a number of things around MEAI and sync to their preview. And then there's been a lot of updates around MEVD as well for the SQL vector store to be able to accept connection strings and then being able to unify the collection for deletion and creation. So just a couple of items in both of our releases that if you haven't had a chance to take a look, we'd recommend you do. With that, I'm going to go ahead and go on to our roadmap and backlog by bucket. I'm going to go put some links in chat as well for all these items. But if you are looking in more detail of a specific item or a specific feature that you're wanting, this is a great place to come and look and see what we're working on, what's in our backlog, and be able to track it that way as well. And so I've put that link in chat for you as well to dive into and look at. And then moving on to update around Discord I mentioned earlier, we've gone through and done a recent Discord server migration. Previously, we were on Semantic Kernel Discord, and we've merged, and we're now part of the Azure AI broader community server Discord. And so our AKA link will take you to our new server. We have a number of channels around .NET, Python, Java, and then for tracking with GitHub and for kernel memory as well. And so look forward to seeing you engage there as well. And then with that, there's just a couple of blogs that I do want to highlight and some updates we've had since the last time that we met. In particular, there are a number of guest blogs and a number of updates around Azure AI agents. There are two in particular that I want to touch on today, and I'm going to turn it over to Edward around some updates with NVIDIA.
Yeah, thanks. The NVIDIA team has been working with us to start adding new support for their latest software around local LLMs with NVIDIA hardware. So the first iteration of that was just released yesterday, where we added a support for text embeddings with NVIDIA. And over the next couple of weeks, we'll work with them to extend that to other types of connectors and models as well.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Edward, for going through that. If folks have any questions, feel free to put them in chat or come off of mute during our open discussion as well. And then with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dimitro to go over our Couchbase connector and an update there as well.
Yes, let me share my screen. And let me know if you can see it.
I can see it now. Can others see it as well?
I assume yes. So recently we released this blog post about Semantic Kernel Couchbase connector. So as you know, in Semantic Kernel we have a set of vector store abstractions that allows you to work with vector stores and perform different operations like upserting the records, deleting the records, getting records, and also perform an actual vector search. And we have a list of vector store connectors supported. And also, like in this documentation, you can see that our connectors, they are developed and maintained by different companies here. For example, we have several connectors that we develop and maintain on our side in Semantic Kernel project, but there's also like the connectors that are developed and maintained on by third-party companies like Elasticsearch. And today I want to talk about Couchbase connector. So in their repository, they have this nice example how to achieve simple rack scenario with Couchbase connectors. So the API is pretty similar to other already available existing connectors today. The first thing you want to do, you want to initialize like kernel and the AI provider like Azure OpenAI Service, for example. Here, you also want to add Couchbase vector store record collection with your connection string and the authentication parameters. You want also to add a vector store text search plugin. So you will be able to, invoke and search your data directly from your prompt. And in their example, they have this CSV file with different, data about hotels. And basically, in the example, we open this file, we parse it, and we take each hotel record. We generate embeddings using Azure OpenAI model, and then we absorb each record to our database. And as soon as it's absorted, basically you can create this prompt. This example contains handlebars template where we instruct our AI model to answer the question based on the provided information, and we use handlebars template to invoke our search plugin and basically describe each hotel and information about it. And then we have the actual question. For example, please show me all hotels that have a rooftop bar. And then as soon as we invoke it, we will be able to get the result. So this API is similar pretty much for every connector available there, but this specific example contains Couchbase connector. So I highly encourage you to check their documentation. We also have some documentation on our side, how to perform all of the initialization, how to set up it, and also our blog post also contains information, how to create properly Couchbase cluster and how to configure database credentials and also create vector search index and how to basically implement this simple rack scenario. So I'm going to share all of the links in chat, and highly encourage you to check it out. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Dimitri. I really appreciate it. Are there any questions that folks have in particular for either of the connectors? If not, I'm going to move into open discussion. I see a couple of questions in chat around AutoGen and Semantic Kernel, and how we really view the two is our AutoGen team is within Microsoft Research, and so they're working on cutting edge. They're going through, and you may have breaking changes. And so I think that kind of choosing between the two, it's a great avenue to be able to have the research engine of AutoGen. With Semantic Kernel, we are production ready, and so we are at 1.0 and beyond. And so you will have minimal breaking changes, and to be able to then go into production environments is really the trade-off between the two of how we look at that. I'm looking at, it looks like there's another question as well. Jean, Colleen, any follow-ups that either of you have?
I'll just add to those, and I'll drop a couple links in the chat. But obviously, if you come to Semantic Kernel office hours, the answer is always start with Semantic Kernel. That's your best choice. But as Sophia said, Semantic Kernel is the production supported and stable library for agent and multi-agent systems. AutoGen will continue, and they're continuing to develop, and we work closely with the AutoGen team to bring features over from AutoGen into Semantic Kernel. But if your intention is to go to production with an application, you should start with Semantic Kernel.
Perfect. I don't see any follow-ups from either of you. Thanks so much for that, Sean. And then seeing that there's a question of if you're using Python, is there a vector store that's preferred? I would love to learn a little bit more about the scenario of what you're trying to go through and create, Ravi, and that may kind of help us in determining that answer as well.
There's a bunch of use cases that I'm actually trying, most of them with text. So I was just curious, like, what would you recommend if I'm just trying to like store large volumes of data and I need to retrieve them quickly and like, search between the data points that have indexed there.
Yeah, so there's no simple answer to that question, but the way we've built it up is that we actually make it quite easy for you to just start with one, see how it performs, and then take the same data and push it into something else. We have a number of options all the way from like local in memory, including we've just added Vice, a Vice connector, so you can have the index using Vice, which is a highly optimized vector search engine. Or a vector search. It's not really a full-on engine because it's only doing the vectors. All the way from that kind of local stuff to Azure AI Search, MongoDB, different versions, Cosmos, different versions. So as with any time you have to choose a data source, it's all about trade-offs between performance, price, and those kinds of things. Yeah, so without knowing more about what the broader scenario is, it's hard to give one recommendation. Probably AI search is a good place to start because, well, it's built for search, so that helps.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think I would concur. I think the connectors, all of them work well, and I had good success with with the Azure AI Search. Of course, you get the hybrid search capability, and if you can, I've used Quadrant, so you can have a Quadrant container in Azure for a large, and then they have a lot of good capabilities for filtering. Even they have hybrid search capability with cross-semantic encoders. So I think for a large things, either Azure AI Search or Quadrant would be a good choice. Yeah.
Great. I'm just looking through chat as well. It looks like, Mark, that you may have a presentation. Do you want me to stop sharing screen for a minute?
Oh no, I don't have a presentation, but just wanted to kind of give just a quick update, right? So and it relates to our vector store connectors.
Yeah, one police called.
Let me mute someone one sec.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for that, Sophia. Yeah, so we've been working with the .NET team over the last 8 or 9 months to take kind of like the abstractions that we have for vector stores and push them down into .NET. So there's a new package out, Microsoft Extensions, Vector Data Abstractions, and that's a joint effort between Semantic Kernel and the .NET team. So last week we released a new updated preview of the vector data abstractions, and we've updated all Semantic Kernel, all of its memory connectors to be consistent with these with the new release. And there's new functionality in there. There's a new way for doing search filters that uses link style filters, and there's also new functionality that allows you to do hybrid search. So we're going to continue to work. Our goal is to GA this around the build timeframe. But one of the things that we want to do in the meantime is that we have an old iMemory store abstraction that's part of Semantic Kernel that we're not actively maintaining anymore. And we're going to mark it as obsolete starting next week, and then have a a phased approach to basically to remove it from semantic kernel. And so what we'd encourage people to do is, if you haven't done it already, to look at switching over to using the vector data abstractions rather than iMemory store. And you will see, starting next week, you will see the old iMemory store being marked as obsolete. Okay. So, yep, so that was it. Are there any questions on that? Okay, that's great. Thanks.
Perfect. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, if anyone does have any questions, feel free to put them in chat or come off of mute. We'd love to hear from you. Are there other questions? Oh, I see we have a hand up. Logan would love to hear from you if you want to come off of mute.
Hi. So in the Python, granted I'm like a week or two out of date here. In the Python repo, in the examples, the demo examples, there's an example for Python GPT-4 or real time that that enables you to call. Is there going to be a C# example of that one?
That definitely is on our backlog to be able to have .NET as well. Mark, is there anything for the .NET side that you'd want to add?
Actually, sorry, I missed the question.
Oh, no worries. It's around real-time audio and being able to have the parity from Python and .NET as well. And so I know that it's in our backlog on .NET, but I didn't know if there was anything in particular that you wanted to add.
Yeah, other than it's in the backlog, like, we have, this is something we'll want to partner with the .NET team on, and try and kind of define that abstraction at the Microsoft extensions level. So, but yeah, we don't have an ETA or anything like that yet.
Okay, so it's not a capability as of yet, but at some point it will be.
Yes, it will be, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks for the question, Logan. Other questions that folks may have?
Is there any good, we see a lot of examples with text and things, but with PDF for RAG scenario using semantic kernel where, unlike Python, particularly in .NET, we don't have a whole bunch of PDF libraries, but what would be a best way to read PDF and use chunking and use the vector store using semantic kernel? Are there some good examples or recommendations?
Yeah, really good question. I'm just gonna look at the repo. I thought we had another example. Edward, in terms of the vector store and being able to have that with PDF, is there anything else that comes to mind for samples?
Not so much in the samples as far as I know. But it's a good question that we'll have a look at. What I have done in the past is actually used other packages that are more focused on actually chunking and reading and all of that stuff, like Llama Index, to actually build my index, and then I used the vector store to interact with that index in my chat. So that works.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Thanks, Edward. And
I'll
then
just
I
add,
see that
I
Sean
dropped in
just
a sample. There is a .NET sample that
Perfect.
does load in PDFs, a demo app. Take a look at.
Perfect. Thanks, Sean. Actually, while we have you, there is a good question in chat. I know we've been chatting about as a team around the recent news from OpenAI regarding the Assistance API and the introduction of the Responses API. Sean, is there anything in particular you want to share up publicly about this?
Given latest news from OpenAI regarding the introduction of the Responses APIs, or plan to adopt those in SK? Yes. Answered. It's coming soon. I think there's an Assistance API based agent that won't be moving towards GA since OpenAI is deprecating the Assistance API at some point next year. And the replacement for the Assistance API is the Responses API. So I think what you'll see very soon is we'll create an agent type that uses responses instead of assistants. We're focused right now on getting the finishing touches on our base agent framework. General availability milestone. If you've been paying attention to our blog, we did a release candidate of that last week. So as we try and get that stable to GA, we haven't done the responses agent yet, but that'll be coming very shortly after we go to GA.
Perfect. Thanks, Sean. Any follow-up questions that folks have on this? If not, are there other questions that folks have? I'm not seeing anything in chat, but would love to have folks come off of mute if you have other questions. Hey, Rajesh, I just read your comment in chat. Yeah, would love if you want to come off mute and elaborate a little bit more on this scenario.
Yeah, let me give it a go. We're looking to create a system, and we think a multi-agent approach is the best way to do it, but obviously would like some validation there. But I have multiple proprietary systems to access, and I have a lot of PDF documents that have images that I want to query in a RAG type approach. I guess my root question is, how can I ensure this that an agentic approach is a good approach for this? And assuming it is, are there any examples I should look at to try and bootstrap up?
Yeah, really great question. There are definitely a lot of samples that we have around multi-agent. I do see that Chris is on as well. Are you using .NET or Python?
At this point, we are pretty open. There is a leaning toward Python, but if we see functionality that's in .NET, we still have the flexibility to choose, but probably not very long.
Okay, yeah, really great to hear. Chris, do you want to dive in a little bit more of how they should approach this multi-agent to be able to go through?
Sure. What was the specific context again? Like, what problem are you trying to solve?
It's essentially a compliance-based system in a finance vertical, and we have a number of proprietary systems that we need to access, and a number of PDFs we want to approach with a RAG approach. I'm trying to see, are agents the right way to do this, or not actually?
Yeah, I think an agent-based approach would have the advantage of being able to have actors with clearly differentiated roles at different stages in the workflow. Especially if you're looking at integrating multiple models with different functional aspects. There's going to be sounds like there's going to be different components, different contracts, kind of ingredients in the recipe for what you're building, and agents, I think, provides a good structure for pursuing that. I see Sean had his hands up.
Yeah, I see, Sean, you have the process framework, which is another really great way to look at it. Do you want to dive in more?
Take a look at our process framework, and there's a sample specifically, if you're working in .NET that uses Aspire. I think that's a great way if you already have some systems that you've deployed, and especially if you're interested in making sure those systems can scale and be run and secured and run independently. Modeling your agents as microservices and then deploying them with something like Aspire is actually probably a great choice. I think the easiest way to think about whether a multi-agent system is right for me is like if you would model the system with microservices traditionally, and you want some of those microservices to be powered by an LLM or powered by Gen AI in some way, then a multi-agent system makes a lot of sense. And you can kind of, the thing you can trade off is like whether you have multiple agents in a single microservice and you kind of model those as a single kind of step in your process, or if you have one agent mapping per microservice.
Perfect. That frame of reference helps a lot, mapping it to a microservice that we're familiar with. Now I know how to map it to agents. Okay. So it would bring up the normal questions of observability, traceability, security that microservices have.
That's right.
Can I assume Semantic Kernel is the right tool to help me address those concerns, or should I look at additional add-ons?
I think from Semantic Kernel, our the main thing we do there is we emit a lot of telemetry, and we have things like filters that allow you to connect into other systems. The actual kind of scalability will come from your underlying runtime. If you're using process framework, we have pluggable runtimes into Dapper, or you can lean on some of the stuff that Aspire offers for that as well. So you can see, if you look at that sample, there's Aspire comes with a bunch of dashboards where you can see, you can observe your microservices, which are agents, and see how long they're running, what they're doing from their telemetry, and then manage things like observe things like token usage from them.
Oh, this is outstanding. Okay, I'll dig into Aspire. Appreciate the pointer, and let me dig into it and understand it a little bit more.
Perfect. Thanks so much for the question. As you have any follow-ups or items as you're building out, feel free to reach back out to us as well. Raj, I saw that you had a couple of follow-ups just in chat. Anything you want to note for the recording?
No, I like the new thing for the document uploader. I'm going to take a look at it. I did not see that, so thanks for sending that. Yeah. I mean, the agents, I'm listening. We're all trying to do the same thing that Rajesh was talking about, right? So in a generic way, the agents are good. The moment now you try to integrate, do tool calling and functions, it gets a little complicated. So I think probably we'll have to try this out, an example rather than generic agents. But how do we now incorporate, let's say I want to do a specific call to an open API to get the data and feed it to the agent and orchestrate all that. And it's not that easy, but I think that's where we need to kind of bring this together for the group agent. Yeah.
Yeah, the group agent being able to use process framework too. There's the agent orchestration as well. And so that's a really good example that Sean put in chat to be able to look at more. Rajesh, I see you have your hand up. If you want to come off of mute, we'd love to hear from you.
Sorry, just to follow up. The document uploader for PDFs, that sounds terrific, using document intelligence. Does it handle being images and being able to convert those to text and query, or is it text only? Or how would I find that out? I guess
Supports documents, images, video, audio, text. I'm reading their website right now. I posted a link in the chat.
Oh, shoot. I should have done that. Thank you. All right. I'll give it a go and see how it works out.
Yeah, let us know if you have questions or findings as you go through. We'd love to hear more other questions that folks may have. I'll give it another minute or two more, but if there aren't any other questions that folks have, we may end a bit early, but would love to hear from you. Feel free to put items in chat. I'm seeing a question around vector embeddings to Postgres. I'm just seeing, let's see, Wesley isn't on. Hey, Edward, is this one that you could handle for with vector? I would love if you could grab this one.
So for Postgres, yeah, we support. I'm pretty sure we support PG Vector, and we have tested our Postgres implementation with both Azure Postgres, but also with the Postgres that's available on Amazon and Google. So I think whatever you want to do with the vector embeddings in Postgres should work.
Perfect, thank you. Any other questions the folks have? We'd love to hear from you.
I think it's been beaten enough, but the biggest challenge is the choice of agentic framework, how it all comes together, multiple options, and then again in the open source CRUA and all of the things. It's still, it has probably it's a question of time, but there is no clear path as to how and when and what framework to use to build agentic solutions.
Yeah, I think Sean highlighted this earlier, right? If you're coming
Yeah.
to the Semantic Kernel office hours, we recommend that you choose Semantic Kernel.
I think your point is fair, though. I mean, I think all these frameworks, there's new frameworks being available every day for building agents. Everyone's adding new features. We add new features every week. You saw some today. Everyone adds new features every week. I think there's a blog post on our blog from a few weeks ago I did with our roadmap with kind of lots of interesting things coming there. But I think the most important things to think about when you're evaluating a framework, especially for a production application, is think about stability, and how often things are going to change under you. Think about supportability. What are you going to do if something does change, or if you need support to fix something in your production system, and think about security. What kind of diligence and review has gone into the code that's actually going into the library you're using. All the features, like new features will come every day. There'll be kind of a flavor of the month every few months of whatever the hot feature is. We'll add those. Other folks will add those. That's not really going to be a durable differentiator, and we'll all end up in the same place from a feature perspective, I think, long term. But think about those things that you want from a framework you're going to build. You're going to bet your application on for building your enterprise applications. And use Semantic Kernel. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Sean. I'm just looking through chat as well. It looks like there's a couple more questions. Vikas, I would love if you don't mind coming off of mute to chat a bit more around what you're doing for your creation of in-memory vector store, and we can help you out with what to be able to proceed with too. If not, I can read out to what you have in chat, no worries. For creating your in-memory vector store for your application, you're trying to replicate the GitHub program, and you're needing to modify to cache a database schema by the method that you shared below. I think it's a really great question. I'm wondering, Edward, is this one that you could dive into with vector store?
I'm sorry, which question?
There's a question in chat from Vikas that is going through creating an in-memory vector store for Semantic Kernel.
Yeah, I saw that was .NET. So is Wesley here?
Yeah, he is
Yeah.
in here. Yeah, no worries. I can
Actually-
follow up.
I actually just joined, but for some reason I can't see the question in chat.
Oh, no worries. Vikas, would you mind coming off of mute? If not, I can copy and paste your question again, just so that Wesley can see it.
Yeah, it might have been before I joined, and I don't think I can see it unless I'm in the meeting.
Yeah,
So
no
if you
worries. I'm
could-
just repasting it in
Okay,
chat here as
perfect.
well.
Thank you.
And while you're reading through, I see that there's a good question in chat of, are there any examples using Copilot Studio agents with Semantic Kernel? This is on our backlog. This is coming as well. Sean, anything to add in particular around the Copilot Studio agents?
I'll drop a link in the chat to a sample for how to do calling semantic kernel agents. So calling Copilot Studio agents from semantic kernel.
So to answer the question on the in-memory sample, the schema that's used is derived from the model that you use. So in the sample, there's a glossary class, and it's decorated with attributes that essentially define what each property is. So there's a key which is attributed with vector store record key attribute. There's a category term and definition which has the vector store record data attribute attached. And then there's a definition embedding which has the
Perfect. Thanks so much, Wesley, for the answer. Any follow-up questions, advocates that you have? Would love to hear from
mentions
you.
to use, and essentially.
So I replicated the complete program, but I am getting one of the error regarding the line number 42 of the code, like resource not found for the embedding API. So is it an AI Foundry portal issue or the code issue? I'm not able to justify that, but I'm trying. So I'm facing some trouble.
So resource not found means that most probably you mentioned the deployment name that doesn't exist. Just pay attention on model name and deployment name. For example, if you use Azure OpenAI, you need to use deployment name when you configure text embedding service, not the model name. And usually in our samples, we try to keep deployment name and model name the same for simplicity. But for example, if in your case it's different, just to be sure to specify deployment name, and it should fix the issue.
Great. Thank you for the input. Let me cross-check over there. Thank you, everyone.
No problem.
Great. Thanks, Dimitri and Wesley. Really appreciate that. Just looking through chat, it looks like there's a question from Walter. Would love to hear more around your scenario in particular from what you've put out. I think using multi-agents versus multiple plugins is a better approach, but would love to hear a lot more about your scenario so we can advise you as well.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yes, I'm working on a right now it's a kind of proof of concept. I'm researching a lot on the different frameworks and alternatives. I was wondering if I could just utilize different plugins in a semantic kernel based solution, or if it will be better to switch to a multi-agent approach, thinking then on scalability, on how to evolve the solution then in production. I will be researching what Sean shared. I wasn't get into that yet, but if you have any advice or any samples, maybe the only part that confused me a little when the solution replies based on user question is because I have one part of the responses that are based on a RAG approach, based on a PDF ingested into or that were indexed, and the other part came from data on SQL Server database.
Got it. I'm just looking for some samples in particular for multi-agent. I would say based on your scenario, being able to use the multi-agent approach is the best. But is there anything else from the team to add in particular for Walter?
I can say something, but this is just my own opinion. I would say start with a single agent first, because it's the easiest to get you started. And then if you think your single agent with multiple tools cannot satisfy your requirement, then you can start exploring multi-agent. Because for more complex tasks, it's been, I would say, proven by a lot of papers that multi-agent workflows can be beneficial to more complex tasks. Yeah, that's just my take on the whole topic.
Okay, thank you, Tal.
Yeah, thanks, Tal. Really appreciate that. I'm seeing in chat we have a good question around function calling. Sergey, would you mind diving into this? They're wondering if function calling would be slower with streaming responses versus non-streaming responses.
Yeah, I started typing. So to be honest, we've never had cases like that. So what we saw, well, what I personally saw is just the function calling can be slower with certain models because those models can be like in a different region or like host like with different SKUs on Azure. But I haven't heard and haven't seen the difference between the streaming and non-streaming function calling. So from the semantic kernel point of view, when the function calling is done via the streaming, we are basically building the function call contents out of the small chunks, and then we convert it into the function call content class. But again, so I don't think that it's like the time spent for the building the function call content from small chunks is kind of like minutes or like tens of seconds. I think it's just like within like a few seconds. And yeah, what I would suggest is just because looking at the second part of the question is just not clear whether you have like performance drop between streaming versus non-streaming function calling, or you have like the slower function calling between different models, between the GPT-4o and GPT-4o 5.13 version.
Perfect. Thanks, Sarah. I really appreciate that. Roger, I see in chat you were adding around the different models and model speed. Is there anything that you want to add in particular as well?
It's just additional compliment to what Sergey was just saying there, that normally the model speed is applies for both APIs. So the difference in streaming is just for UI updating and refreshing. But technically that should be the same. But the difference you will notice more in function calling is that for models are faster token byte per second, they will kind of invoke your functions faster than models are slower on inference generation. That's my view of it and my experience as well. That's what I can add.
Perfect. Thanks, Roger. Any follow-up questions, Deepinder, that you have?
I would like to follow up.
No, not really. Thanks for the information. This was less about semantic kernel handling, like streaming versus non-streaming function calling, more about how models, like if in case you guys had any information on models being slower because they're not sort of sending the responses token by token. Yeah, so in our case, everything else remains the same. We have models deployed in Azure. It's just the model version changes, and we are seeing like double the time it takes for the same queries. So you're just trying to figure out where the problem lies. But thanks for your responses.
Yeah, what I would advise you to do is just like use one model, for example, GPT-4 Mini, and try streaming versus non-streaming. Most likely you did this, but like if you didn't do that before switching to the other model, so and see whether there is a difference between streaming and non-streaming. And if you see like the double difference that like non-streaming function calling is just like taking, I don't know, just for example, like 3 seconds while the streaming one taking 10 seconds, then please let us know, just like create an issue and like so that we can look at it. And again, so we can investigate like semantic kernel part of it just to make sure that we don't have any issues there.
Okay, will do. Thanks.
Great, thank you. I see we have a hand up Reese, I would love if you want to come off of mute. Reza, if you're speaking, we can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, hi. My name is Reza, and I have a question regarding to OpenAI assistants. I'm using a newly code, but my problem is I'm reading some large file, but how can I get all the file? Because I want to read all the file and analyze it and do something after that. But it seems I cannot read all the files. Is there some way I can get all the content of the file?
You said you're using the Assistance API, Reza?
Yes.
Yeah. So what's going on when you use the file search with the Assistance API? That's getting uploaded to OpenAI's file store,
Yes.
and is getting converted into a vector database and searched. The way you'll get back to the original file is in the results there'll be a citations link that will take you back to the file that you've uploaded hosted in OpenAI. So it's not really like a semantic kernel thing. That's how kind of OpenAI's assistant service works.
Yeah, I do everything and also change this chunk strategy to bigger, when I'm adding to a vector database from OpenAI. But still, when I'm searching, sometimes I don't get all that. In some way, maybe should be I get all my chunks from vector database, but it's not possible for me.
I don't think OpenAI exposes the chunks if you're using their assistance API and the file upload from it.
Okay, there is some method in this vector operations, chunk history, and so I add this static file chunk history, when I am chunking. But I don't know how can I do it really, because maybe I have to call multiple times to get all information. I don't know.
This is an OpenAI API that you're looking at?
Yeah, I am using OpenAI GPT-4 O Mini.
Yeah, it might be worth following up with on the OpenAI forums for that.
Okay.
Or use Azure AI Search as well.
Yeah, but the user uploading documents on the fly. Okay, so I'm using this vector in the OpenAI, and when it's uploaded, so after that the code run okay for a small document with 5, 6, and 7 pages. But if it's more than 10 pages, so I don't get all the information I need.
Yeah, I think we're following up on OpenAI, and the other thing I'll mention, OpenAI is deprecating the Assistance API. I think the file tool mostly stays the same, but they're recommending folks move to their Responses API.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Great, and then there's a couple other questions in chat. There's one around with Bing search and search tools and Azure AI Foundry, could they use in Semantic Kernel as well? I'm going to put a link to some of our documentation updates for being able to use Azure AI agents with Semantic Kernel and how you can be able to integrate the two. If you do have follow-up questions as well, I see Sean's coming off of me. I'm just putting that link to documentation in chat as well.
Yeah, I think a couple things to add there. There's a couple paths that you can take. You can invoke the search and Bing search or file search directly from from your agents, or directly from Semantic Kernel as a plugin. We have built-in plugins for search. I think file search, I know for web search are available. If you want to do like a vector search, we have all our APIs for memory storage, for vector storage, and you can search over those in the same way that the search tool file search as a service does within Foundry agents. The Bing search API is being deprecated as an API that you can use for LLMs. So there's other services you can use to do web searches. And we'll have some samples up for those shortly. I think we have one for Google right now, but we'll add a few more. And then the other option is you can use grounding with Bing, which is a service that's associated with Azure AI agents, and so you can build an agent that returns results from that service in the Azure AI agent service, and then you can access that as a tool or in a multi-agent system for getting grounding with Bing.
Perfect. Thanks, Sean. While we have you, there's one other question around agents that a couple of folks had asked of when should you use agent framework versus with multiple agents just having a chat completion agent instead of using agent framework? Is there a kind of path or a recommended approach that we would have between the two?
Yes, just to clarify, so chat completion agents are part of the agent framework. So within agent framework, we have a few different types of chat agents. Chat completion is kind of the most basic one. That's where you bring your own model, you bring your own plugins, and you execute your agents that way. There's also wrappers and agents for Azure AI agent service, and we talked about assistants and Bedrock agents and AutoGen, and we'll be adding a few more going forward. If you're asking around kind of chat completion agents versus Azure AI agent service, I think it's going to depend on what you want to do, what models you want to use, what capabilities you want to add. My recommendation is to start with hosted agents and managed agents. It's a lot easier. You don't have to worry about hosting. There's a bunch of plugins and capabilities that are built in. And then do your multi-agent orchestration from Semantic Kernel, and then deploy Semantic Kernel separately and have it orchestrate your agents. That's kind of the easiest path. Depending on if you want to do like kind of local tool usage, that's where using chat completion agents is something you'll need to do. And if you're using different models or combining things together that aren't supported yet in the Azure AI agent service, then that's where chat completion agents come in as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Sean. I'm not seeing any more questions in chat. Are there any other questions that folks have? We'd love to hear from you if you want to come off of mute, or feel free to put them in chat as well.
Just to piggyback off of the previous question, right? Where let's say I have multiple agents built in, and I've built my own chat completion agents, and now I need to make those agents interact with each other. How would you recommend I do that? Like, let's say I have 3 chat completion agents. I need them to talk to each other as well as talk to me. In that situation, what would you recommend as an ideal approach?
Yeah, I think the most common approach that we're seeing. I don't think there's an ideal approach yet. I think there's still kind of new patterns of being developed and understood from multi-agent systems. One of the most common that seems to work pretty well in a lot of cases is agents as tools. And so you can specify, you have like a manager style agent, and it can call the other agents as if they were a tools call, and pass data to them and return that data. So for example, you might have a manager agent that's doing research, and it might ask its search agent. We talked about getting results from Bing grounding. It might ask that agent to go and search the web on a particular topic and return results. It may then pass that agent. It may then ask an agent for some internal databases to get more information. Then you might have a writer agent that it would use as a tool to kind of take all that information and generate content on top of it. And that's how you would build like a research multi-agent system. So that's probably the most common pattern right now, is to use agents as tools.
Alrighty, thank you.
Great, thank you for the question. Any other questions that folks have? Anthony, I see your hand if you want to come off of me. We'd love to hear from you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I have a question. I've got a customer that we're using Microsoft's CSU Migration Factory to help accelerate RAG implementation. And GPT-RAG, there's a repository that's available. You guys may have discussed this in the past, but I'll put it in the chat there just for reference, because it's a great repository as an accelerator. The lesson learned that we had from this was initially we started with the GPT RAG repository, and that is really more purpose built for unstructured data in terms of your knowledge base. And it turned out the customer really, its primary data source was their data warehouse, and it was much more structured based. And so it still uses the same repository, but it uses an agentic version of the repo. And the unstructured one uses Semantic Kernel as its orchestrator, and the structured one uses AutoGen. And I just was curious from this group here if that was just a decision made by the group that put together this accelerator to go with Semantic Kernel for the unstructured scenario and AutoGen for the structured scenario, or if there are real reasons why you would use Semantic Kernel in more of an unstructured data scenario and AutoGen in a structured one, specifically text to SQL, is what they was what they were focused on, and why we had to move from one to the other. Yeah, Sean.
I don't know this repo specifically. I don't know if anyone else on the team has taken a look at it. But I suspect that was a point in time thing. They may have wanted to show one versus the other. That you have options. I don't think I can't imagine a reason other than potentially. Also, if this was originally, I'm looking at when it was created, looks like it's about 10 months old. At that point in time, there may have been some capabilities in AutoGen that were, not in Semantic Kernel at the time.
Okay, but no reason you wouldn't stay away from Semantic Kernel and a structured
I can't think of one
scenario
based on
approach,
what I
right?
see here. I can't think of one.
Okay. Thanks. Appreciate that.
Great. Thanks for the question, Anthony. Any final questions? We have about a minute or two left. So if there are any last minute questions, happy to dive in now. If not, I just want to thank everyone for joining and for your time, and for everyone from the Semantic Kernel team for joining as well. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.